They made the rancher marry the old maid. What she did afterwards shook the entire County.sV. Rancher Jace Corwin stood outside his small barn, brushing dirt from his hands. His livestock, mostly genetically adapted sheep and goats, grazed quietly under the artificial light of the domed farm. Life here on Mars was hard, but it was honest work. Jace liked it that way. Yet today was not a day for peace. Today, the Colony Council had summoned him to the main dome, and he had a sinking feeling in his stomach. The council chambers were filled with the usual hum of controlled climate systems and the soft whirring of automated recorders. At the center, a long, oval table held the colony's leaders. Their faces were serious, their eyes sharp under the harsh dome light. "Jace Corwin," said Councillor Reth, a tall woman with streaks of silver in her hair. "Thank you for coming so promptly." Her voice carried authority. Jace nodded, though his jaw tightened. "I assume this is about the water supply again?" he asked, trying to keep his tone neutral. Reth shook her head. "No, it's more personal. You have been chosen to marry Helara Voss." The words hit Jace like a hammer. He blinked, certain he had misheard. "I what?" The council exchanged glances as if rehearsing the next words. "It is necessary," Reth said firmly. "Helara has skills that are critical to the colony's survival, and your partnership through marriage will ensure stability, efficiency, and progress. The council has decided." Jace felt his face grow hot. "Decided, without me." "It is for the greater good," Councillor Thane said, his tone flat and uncompromising. "You will marry her, Jace. This is not a suggestion." He looked around the room, hoping for some sign of understanding, but there was none. The council's decision was final. Jace left the chamber in silence, his thoughts storming. Helara Voss. He had seen her in passing, a quiet, older woman who worked in the hydroponics lab. People called her an old maid, as if that word could capture the sum of her life. She kept to herself, never seeking attention, never causing trouble. Jace had always thought of her as ordinary. He trudged back to his barn, the weight of the council's words pressing down. "Forced to marry her," he muttered under his breath. "Just like that." Meanwhile, in the hydroponics lab, Helara heard the council's decision before Jace even knew. She stood at her workbench, adjusting a cluster of nutrient tubes that fed the new Martian crops. When Reth's message arrived via the colony's communication system, she did not flinch. She listened carefully, her face calm. "Yes," she said softly to the recorder. "I will comply. It is for the colony." Helara did not feel panic or anger or fear. She had lived long enough on New Horizon to understand that personal feelings often came second to survival. But beneath her calm exterior, a spark of determination ignited. If she was going to be forced into this union, she would make it meaningful, not just for herself, but for the colony. The next morning, Jace approached her modest quarters. He was nervous, unsure what to say. Helara was already outside, tending to a small patch of experimental crops she had placed near the entrance. Her hands moved quickly, efficiently, almost as if she had rehearsed every motion 1,000 times. "Good morning," she said, looking up. Her voice was soft but carried authority. "A morning," Jay stammered. He shifted from foot to foot. "So I guess we're married now." "Yes," she said simply. "The council decided. I assume you have objections." Of course I do," Jace admitted. "I mean, I never agreed to this. He stopped, realizing how awkward he sounded. Helara raised an eyebrow. "I am aware of what the council has called me, and I also know that words from the colony do not define us. I will not be offended by your initial impression." Jace blinked. She was calm, unshaken, almost confident. It annoyed him and intrigued him at the same time. "So what now?" he asked. "Now," Helara looked at him with a small smile. "We learn to work together. We take care of the ranch. We help the colony survive. And perhaps in time we may learn to respect each other." Jace stared at her. "Respect? Even more than respect, Jace," she said, turning to inspect her crops. "We may find that we complement each other. strengths and weaknesses balanced. But that will only happen if you are willing to try. He nodded slowly, unsure if he could. But Helara did not wait for an answer. She returned to her work, adjusting the water pumps and nutrient feeds with mechanical precision. Jace watched her for a moment, then reluctantly joined her, fetching tools and checking the livestock pens. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, Jace began to notice things about Helara. She was meticulous, always planning, always anticipating problems before they arose. She spoke to the colony's engineers, offering solutions no one else had thought of. And in her quiet way, she taught Jace to think beyond the immediate work of tending animals and soil. One evening, after a long day of repairs and maintenance, Helara pulled Jace aside. "I want to show you something," she said, her eyes bright. In the barn, she unveiled a small device. It looked simple, just a series of tubes, sensors, and small pumps, but it was far more than that. "This," she said, "can double crop yields using half the water. I've been working on it for months. I call it the TerraGrow module." Jace stared. You made this?" "Yes," Helara said calmly. "It will help the colony survive, and it will make our farm more productive than ever." He ran a hand through his hair. I didn't realize you were this skilled." Helara smiled faintly. "Most people don't. They judge too quickly, but I care more about results than opinions." That night, Jace lay awake in his small quarters thinking. Forced to marry someone he barely knew, yet here she was, changing everything he thought he knew about the settlement, about life, and about people. He realized something important. Maybe this union was not a punishment after all. Maybe it was an opportunity. The council would never admit it, but Jace could see now that Helara's skills might be exactly what the colony needed. And if he worked with her, maybe he could help not just the farm, but the entire settlement thrive. Outside, the Martian wind howled softly against the domed walls. Inside, a new partnership was quietly taking root, one that would shake not just the ranch, but the entire colony of New Horizon. And Helara, ever calm, ever precise, smiled to herself in the dim light. She had been underestimated, as always. But now, finally, she would show them all what she was capable of. The morning sun spilled across the domed farms of New Horizon, painting the red soil with shades of gold. Jace Corwin stepped outside, taking a deep breath of the filtered air. The wind carried a dry, metallic tang, but the familiar smell of the earth, synthetic or not, was comforting. Helara Voss was already at work, kneeling beside one of her experimental crop beds. Her hands moved with precision, adjusting tubes and sprinklers, checking the tiny seedlings sprouting through the soil. Jace paused for a moment, watching. She was quiet but focused, a living engine of order and purpose. "You're up early," Jace said, trying for a casual tone. "I prefer mornings," Helara replied without looking up. "It is the most efficient time for observation. Light angles, moisture distribution, and temperature readings are all optimal. And besides," she added, a hint of a smile forming, "I assume you have tasks of your own." Jace glanced at the pens where the Martian-adapted goats grazed. "Yeah, but your work, it's different. I mean, I didn't realize it was this detailed." Helara finally looked at him, her eyes sharp and clear. "Most people don't. They see what is in front of them, plants, animals, machines. But they rarely see the connections, the systems. Everything here is linked. One failure can cascade. That's why I focus on prevention, not just reaction." Jace nodded slowly, impressed despite himself. "You make it sound simple," Helara chuckled softly. "It is simple if you understand it, complex only if you ignore it." That day, they worked together more closely than before. Jace handled the livestock while Helara focused on her crop modules. But they communicated constantly, Jace calling out animal needs, Helara instructing on irrigation schedules, nutrient mixes, and soil checks. For the first time, Jace felt like they were a team. Later, Helara called him over to one of her smaller modules. "I want to show you something," she said. This is the TerraGrow module in action. Jace leaned in, eyes wide. The small device hummed quietly, tiny tubes pumping water and nutrients in precise cycles. The seedlings inside glowed faintly, healthy and vibrant despite the sparse Martian soil. "Look at this," Helara said, pointing to the readout. "It uses half the water of traditional beds but produces stronger, faster-growing crops. If scaled up, it could double our colony's output." Jace whistled softly. "Double? That's huge," Helara nodded. "It is, but it is not just about the crops. It's about efficiency, survival, and resilience. If the water supply falters or storms damage the fields, these modules will keep the colony fed." Jace felt a thrill of respect. For weeks, he had thought of her as reserved, quiet, maybe even irrelevant to the hard work of ranching. Now he realized how wrong he had been. She was brilliant, and her mind could change everything. As the sun climbed higher, a soft alarm sounded from the colony's communication system. A storm warning flashed across the screens in the barn. Jace frowned. Martian storms were unpredictable, often violent, and the automated shields over the settlement were still limited in capacity. Helara's expression did not change. "We have about 3 hours before the storm hits," she said calmly. "We need to secure the livestock and protect the crops." Jace's heart raced. 3 hours, that's not much time." "It's enough," Helara replied, "if we act efficiently and follow a plan." Within minutes, Helara organized the work. She assigned Jace to secure the livestock pens, reinforcing gates and checking oxygen levels in the shelters. Meanwhile, she began moving her TerraGrow modules into protected areas, adjusting pumps and creating backup nutrient reservoirs. Jace followed her instructions, feeling a strange mix of anxiety and admiration. Helara's calm, commanding presence made the impossible seem possible. He realized he had never seen anyone approach problems like this. As the storm approached, the wind outside howled against the domed structures, kicking up red dust and small rocks. The settlement's automated systems strained, but Helara's careful planning kept the farm and animals safe. She moved swiftly between tasks, checking water levels, reinforcing covers, and monitoring the module's readings. Jace worked beside her, catching himself glancing at her often. He noticed the precision in her movements, the thoughtfulness in every decision. It was inspiring. Hours later, the storm passed, leaving a thin layer of dust on the domes but no major damage. Jace leaned against the barn wall, exhausted but exhilarated. We did it," he said. Helara wiped her hands and nodded. "Yes, together." For the first time, Jace felt a new sense of possibility. Helara was not just his partner in name. She was his partner in work, in problem-solving, in survival. And that partnership was powerful. The next few days brought further tests. Supplies from Earth were delayed due to orbital alignment issues, and minor equipment failures threatened the crops. Each time, Helara approached the problem with calm efficiency. She fixed broken pumps, adjusted water cycles, and even designed small drones to monitor soil and livestock. Jace began to follow her lead more and more. At first, he resisted. He was a hands-on rancher, used to solving problems with brute effort and instinct. But Helara's methods were different. They were smart, thoughtful, and remarkably effective. One evening, after another long day, Jace found himself sitting with Helara outside the barn. The red Martian sky glowed dimly under the artificial lights, and for a moment the planet seemed quiet and peaceful. "You've changed a lot here," Jace said quietly. Helara looked at him, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the settlement lights. "I've only done what I must," she replied. "The colony needs stability, efficiency, survival. I do not seek praise." Jace shook his head. "It's not just about praise. You've made me see things differently. The way you think, it's incredible. I didn't understand before." "I do now," Helara smiled faintly. "Understanding is the first step toward respect, Jace. The rest comes with time." Over the following weeks, their teamwork strengthened. The TerraGrow modules were installed across the settlement and the crops flourished. The livestock thrived under Jace's care, guided by Helara's improvements to water and nutrient systems. Word of their success spread quickly. Colony members began to approach them for advice, asking about methods and techniques. Even the council took notice, impressed by the rapid improvements. One afternoon, Councillor Reth visited the farm. "I must admit," she said, looking at the thriving crops, "I did not expect such results so quickly." Helara remained calm. "The results were always possible," she said. "They only required proper planning and attention." Jace smiled, feeling a quiet pride. "We make a good team," he said, glancing at Helara. The older woman's eyes softened slightly. "Indeed. Humans achieve remarkable things when they work together. It is the simplest truth, and one that is too often overlooked." That night, as the settlement settled into a peaceful routine, Jace reflected on the changes. He had been forced into this marriage, yes, but the experience had taught him something invaluable. Helara was not just a partner in name, she was a partner in every sense that mattered. He realized, too, that his own prejudices had been challenged. He had dismissed her because of labels, assumptions, and gossip. Now he understood that those labels meant nothing compared to competence, intelligence, and courage. Helara, in turn, continued her work quietly, never seeking recognition. But she also recognized the subtle shift in Jace, a growing respect, a willingness to collaborate, a recognition of the value of her skills. Together, they were beginning to change the settlement. Small improvements in crops and livestock care were creating larger ripples. The colony was more stable, morale was higher, and the council could see that two people, forced together, yet willing to work, could accomplish far more than any single individual. And somewhere deep in the Martian night, under the domed sky, a quiet partnership was taking root. One born of circumstance, but growing into something far greater than either had imagined. Jace realized that perhaps, in the harsh, red deserts of Mars, this was exactly where he was meant to be. With Helara, learning, growing, and discovering that even forced unions could become extraordinary collaborations. And Helara, ever patient, ever wise, quietly noted every success, every lesson, every moment. She knew that the next challenge would come soon, and when it did, they would face it together. The colony of New Horizon had been thriving for months. Crops were abundant, livestock healthy, and morale high. The partnership between Jace Corwin and Helara Voss had become the backbone of the settlement. Their teamwork was admired quietly by the townspeople, though most still referred to their marriage with whispered skepticism. But Mars was not a forgiving planet, and the challenges of survival were never far away. It began with a routine scan from the orbital satellites. Helara, monitoring data in her lab, noticed a series of anomalies, a cluster of small asteroids on an unusual trajectory. At first, it seemed harmless. Small space rocks often passed near the settlement without incident, but as she examined the readings more closely, her calm demeanor sharpened. "Jace," she called through the comlink, "we have a potential hazard. I need you in the control room immediately." Jace hurried, his mind racing. "What kind of hazard?" "A storm from above," Helara said, her tone steady but urgent. "A small asteroid field may intersect with the colony's orbital path. Shields can handle small debris, but there is a risk of larger fragments striking our water reserves or energy arrays." Jace felt a chill. "We don't have time to evacuate, do we?" "No," Helara replied. "We have time to prepare, but every second counts." The control room hummed with the quiet energy of monitoring equipment. Helara pulled up detailed maps of the settlement, calculating angles of approach, potential impact zones, and vulnerable structures. Jace watched, fascinated and concerned as she worked with precise efficiency. "You've done this kind of calculation before?" he asked, unable to hide his admiration. "I've had to," she said simply. "Mars is unforgiving. Even small mistakes can become disasters." "But it's not just calculation, it's preparation, organization, and teamwork," Jace nodded. "Then let's do it. What do you need me to do?" Helara outlined the plan quickly. Jace would secure the livestock, reinforcing protective shelters and ensuring oxygen supplies were adequate. Helara would coordinate the placement of portable shield modules and reinforce critical water and energy systems. Every colonist capable of assisting would have a role, and she assigned them quickly, efficiently, without hesitation. The clock began ticking. Outside, the dusty wind stirred against the domes, and a faint tremor ran through the settlement as the first warning signals flashed from orbit. Jace rushed to the pens, barking orders to the workers. "Move the goats. Check the oxygen lines. Make sure every animal is secure." Meanwhile, Helara guided technicians to install the portable shields, positioning them in layers to absorb impacts. She adjusted sensors, calculated energy outputs, and predicted the field of debris. Her calmness was contagious, and soon, the initial panic among the colonists faded into focused action. As the hours passed, small fragments began to strike the outer shields. Sparks flew and alarms sounded, but the settlement held. Helara monitored the situation constantly, her eyes darting between screens, her mind running calculations faster than anyone else could follow. Jace worked beside her, sometimes helping with heavy equipment, sometimes carrying messages between teams. He began to see the full scope of Helara's genius, not just in her knowledge, but in her ability to organize, predict, and inspire. She could see patterns and possibilities others missed. A loud clang echoed from the water storage unit. A small fragment had struck, causing a minor leak. Jace's heart raced. "Don't panic," Helara said firmly. "Grab the repair kit. I've reinforced the valves. Follow the instructions exactly, step by step." Together, they fixed the leak quickly. Helara's guidance and Jace's hands-on skill made an unbeatable combination. Within minutes, the water flow was restored, the leak sealed, and the storage unit stable. Outside, the sky glowed with streaks of fire as asteroids hit the outer shields. Dust clouds rose, reflecting the orange light of the Martian sun. Colonists huddled in safe zones, watching as their leaders, Helara and Jace, coordinated the defense. Hours passed, and the danger began to subside. The larger fragments had mostly been absorbed by the reinforced shields, and the final few smaller rocks passed harmlessly. Helara checked each system meticulously. The water supply, energy grids, and crop modules, all intact. Jace exhaled deeply, a mix of relief and awe in his chest. We made it," he said. Helara nodded, her expression calm but satisfied. "Yes, and it was because everyone did their part. You did yours, Jace. We all did." For the first time, Jace realized the full depth of her leadership. She did not need to raise her voice or demand attention. Her presence, competence, and clear thinking inspired everyone to act efficiently and confidently. The council later visited the farm to assess damage. Councillor Thane, usually stern and reserved, shook his head in disbelief. "I did not expect the colony to remain intact," he said. "Your coordination, it saved lives and resources." Helara replied simply, "The colony saved itself. I only guided the process." But Jace could see that the council had a new respect for her. They had seen firsthand how her skills could change outcomes. And he felt a quiet pride, knowing that her brilliance had been part of his life now, not as a burden but as a partnership. In the days following the asteroid storm, Helara's influence on the colony became even more apparent. The Terragro modules thrived despite the dust and minor disruptions. Crops recovered faster than expected, livestock flourished, and morale among the colonists grew. Jace found himself working differently now. He no longer relied solely on instinct and muscle. He thought ahead, considered strategies, and collaborated closely with Helara on every decision. Their partnership had transformed not just the farm, but the very culture of the settlement. One evening, as the settlement rested, Jace and Helara stood outside the barn, looking at the red Martian sky. The storm had passed, leaving a quiet, calm world. "You handled that perfectly," Jace said quietly. I never realized how smart and fast-thinking you were. I'm impressed." Helara smiled faintly. "Impressed? You should be. Humans often underestimate what one person can do when they focus on solutions rather than complaints." Jace laughed softly. "I guess I'm learning. I used to think you were just quiet, kept to yourself. Now I see your mind, it's amazing." "Thank you," Helara said. "But remember, it's not about being amazing. It's about being prepared, being careful, being willing to act when needed." Jace nodded. He realized that the lessons he was learning from Helara were more than technical. They were about life, responsibility, and the power of human ingenuity. As the weeks passed, small improvements continued. The colony thrived in ways no one expected. Water usage was optimized, energy grids stabilized, and food production increased significantly. Other settlements took notice, sending messages asking for guidance. Jace and Helara began holding small workshops, teaching colonists about the new farming techniques, repair methods, and safety measures. The community learned quickly, guided by their example. One day, a young colonist approached Jace. "Sir, Helara says the new irrigation system saved our crops during the storm," the boy said. "How did she think of that?" Jace smiled. "She saw what others didn't, she planned ahead, and she never gave up. That's why we survived." The boy nodded, awe in his eyes. Jace realized that Helara's impact was more than immediate. She was shaping the next generation of settlers, teaching them to think, plan, and act. That evening, as Jace returned to the barn, he found Helara working late on new improvements to the TerraGrow modules. "Still working?" he asked. "Yes," she replied, eyes fixed on the data screens. "There is always more to do. Efficiency, safety, sustainability, all can improve." Jace leaned against the wall, watching her. He realized how much he had changed. He had gone from a skeptical rancher, angry at the forced marriage, to a partner who respected and relied on Helara. And in doing so, he had also learned more about himself, about patience, collaboration, and the value of skill and intelligence. Mars was harsh. Life was unpredictable, but Jace now knew that with Helara by his side, they could face anything. And he had no doubt that together, they would continue to lead the colony to success, no matter what threats the unforgiving red planet might send their way next. And somewhere in the quiet hum of the settlement, under the glow of the domed lights, a deep partnership had formed, not from choice alone, but from trust, respect, and the undeniable power of human ingenuity. The settlement of New Horizon was alive with activity. Crops were flourishing, livestock thrived, and the colonists had begun to look at their red world with hope instead of fear. Yet, despite the recent successes, Helara Voss knew that the colony's survival was never guaranteed. Mars was unpredictable and resources were always limited. Early one morning, she called Jace to the lab, her eyes bright with excitement. "I have an idea," she said, "something that could change the settlement entirely." Jace raised an eyebrow. "Change it how?" Helara gestured to a table covered with schematics, small machines, and containers of soil. "A self-sustaining farm module, compact, efficient, and capable of maintaining crops even if water or power supplies falter. It could support the colony during storms, supply delays, or other emergencies." Jace studied the designs, impressed. "You think it's possible?" "I know it is," Helara replied. "We have the technology and we have the knowledge. We just need to build it and test it." Over the next few weeks, they worked tirelessly. Helara's mind raced with calculations, while Jace used his hands-on experience to construct the first prototype. The module was small, barely larger than a shipping container. but inside it contained everything a mini farm could need: hydroponic trays, nutrient reservoirs, automated lights, and energy-efficient pumps. "Look at this," Helara said one evening as they finished assembling the module. "It can support enough food for 20 colonists using half the water of traditional farms." Jace whistled. 20 colonists in a container. That's insane." "Not insane," Helara said calmly. "Practical, efficient, and resilient." Their first test began at dawn. The module was sealed, its systems activated, and Helara monitored every sensor while Jace made adjustments to the pumps and lights. Slowly, the tiny seedlings inside began to grow, nourished by precise water and nutrient flows. "This is amazing," Jace said, leaning against the wall, watching the growth charts update in real time. "I've never seen anything like it." Helara smiled faintly. "That is because most people only see the surface. Efficiency requires understanding systems, anticipating problems, and preparing solutions. That is what we have done here." As the module thrived, news spread through the settlement. Colonists gathered outside the lab, curious to see the innovation. Whispers of admiration filled the air. People began to understand that this was more than a machine. It was a lifeline, a promise of stability in a harsh world. Counselor Reth visited the lab, her expression one of cautious curiosity. "I hear you have built something remarkable," she said. Helara remained calm. "It is designed to sustain the colony during unexpected challenges." "It is not a replacement for effort, but a tool to enhance it." Reth nodded slowly. "If this works, it could change everything. Mars is unforgiving and resources are scarce. Anything that increases efficiency is valuable." Jace felt a surge of pride. Helara had not only imagined this, but she had made it a reality. And now, the settlement could see it with their own eyes. The next challenge came sooner than expected. A minor storm had swept across the plains overnight, damaging some of the older crop beds. But the module remained untouched, its systems shielded and automated. The colonists watched in awe as Helara and Jace demonstrated how the module could maintain crops even under adverse conditions. "This is incredible," said a young colonist named Myra. "It saved our food when the storm hit." "Yes," Helara replied. "It is not about saving crops alone. It is about preparation, planning, and using knowledge to protect what we have." Word of their success reached neighboring settlements. Soon, emissaries arrived, eager to learn about the new farming system. Helara and Jace began to teach others how to build, maintain, and optimize the modules. Their methods spread quickly, offering hope to other frontier colonies struggling with harsh environments. Despite the growing attention, Helara remained humble. She focused on her work, adjusting systems, improving efficiency, and mentoring the next group of settlers. Jace, too, embraced his new role, using his practical skills to implement her ideas across the settlement. Together, they became an unstoppable team, blending vision and action. One evening, after a long day of work, Jace and Helara walked outside the domed settlement. The Martian sun was dipping below the horizon, casting long, orange shadows across the red plains. "You've changed everything here," Jace said quietly. "I can't believe how much we've accomplished." Helara looked at him, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "It is not me alone. You worked alongside me. The colonists followed our guidance. Together, we have made it possible." Jace smiled. "I've learned more from you than I ever imagined. I used to resist this forced marriage, but now I can't imagine working without you." Helara's lips curved into a faint smile. "And I could not imagine facing these challenges alone." Humans achieve remarkable things when they work together, Jace. That is the lesson I hope the colony remembers. As the days turned into weeks, the settlement's transformation became undeniable. Water usage dropped, crop yields increased, and colonists adapted quickly to the new methods. Small-scale conflicts over resources disappeared, replaced by collaboration and shared goals. Jace noticed subtle changes in the community as well. Colonists who had doubted Helara's abilities now sought her guidance. Even the council, once skeptical, began to respect her judgment and leadership. Her influence extended beyond the farm. It shaped the settlement's culture, emphasizing intelligence, preparation, and human ingenuity. One afternoon, Helara called a meeting in the central dome. Colonists gathered, curious about her announcement. "I have designed a second-generation module," she began. "This version is smaller, more energy efficient, and capable of supporting even more crops. It can be deployed quickly, allowing each family to maintain food independence while still contributing to the colony's overall success." The crowd murmured in excitement. Colonists understood the significance: survival, independence, and efficiency all in one innovation. Jace watched as Helara explained the system. He felt a deep sense of pride. She had been underestimated, labeled as someone past her prime, yet here she was, transforming the colony, inspiring others, and shaping the future of human life on Mars. "People said I was an old maid," Helara said softly, looking at Jace. "They thought I had little to offer, but knowledge, preparation, and action are never limited by age or appearance. That is what I want everyone to understand." Jace reached out, placing a hand on hers. "You've already proven that, and more. You've changed everything, not just the colony, but how people see themselves and what they believe humans can do." Helara nodded, her calm smile unwavering. "It is not about proving myself. It is about proving what humans can achieve when we use our minds, our skills, and our willingness to work together. That is the legacy we leave." By the end of the month, several second-generation modules had been deployed across the settlement. Each one was a small miracle: crops growing steadily, water conserved, energy usage optimized, and colonists empowered to take responsibility for their survival. Jace realized that the forced marriage, which had once filled him with resentment, had become the catalyst for something far greater. Helara's vision, combined with his practical skills, had created a model for human ingenuity, one that would influence not just New Horizon, but potentially all future Martian colonies. In the quiet of the evening, after the modules were checked and systems running smoothly, Jace and Helara stood outside the barn once more. The stars above Mars shimmered, tiny points of light against the dark sky. "You know," Jace said, "I never thought I'd see the day when people would admire the work of an old maid." Helara chuckled softly. "Labels are meaningless, Jace. Actions define us. Knowledge, creativity, and determination, these are what matter." Jace nodded. "And you've shown all of that. I'm proud to work with you." Helara's eyes softened, a rare expression of warmth. "And I am grateful for your partnership. Together, we've accomplished more than either of us could alone." Mars remained harsh and unforgiving, but within the domed settlement of New Horizon, something extraordinary was happening. A forced union had blossomed into an incredible partnership. And through innovation, collaboration, and human ingenuity, the colony was no longer just surviving, it was thriving. The transformation was complete, yet it was only the beginning. Helara and Jace had proven that humans could adapt, innovate, and overcome challenges even on a distant, red planet. Their work had not only saved the settlement, but had inspired a vision of what human life could achieve: resilient, resourceful, and unstoppable. And somewhere deep in the Martian plains, under the quiet glow of the domed lights, the legacy of their partnership began to take root, promising a future where humans would continue to thrive, no matter the challenges ahead. The settlement of New Horizon had changed forever. Once a struggling outpost of humanity on the harsh Martian plains, it now thrived with innovation, cooperation, and hope. Crops were abundant, livestock strong, and water and energy supplies carefully managed by the new systems Helara Voss and Jace Corwin had developed together. Even the council, who had once forced Jace into marriage, now looked upon the two with a mixture of respect and admiration. The so-called old maid was no longer underestimated. She had proven that knowledge, preparation, and action could achieve more than any decree or prejudice. One morning, as the sun rose over the domes, Helara and Jace walked together across the fields. The wind carried the faint smell of Martian dust and new growth, and the settlement was already alive with activity. Colonists moved efficiently between farms, livestock pens, and Terragrow modules, following the systems the couple had implemented. "We've come a long way," Jace said quietly, glancing at the thriving crops. Helara nodded. "Yes, and yet there is always more to do. Survival is never static. The future requires constant adaptation and improvement." Jace smiled. "I used to think survival was just about hard work and stubbornness. Now I know it's about intelligence, planning, and teamwork. And you," he paused, searching for the words, "you've taught me more than I could have imagined." Helara's lips curved into a faint smile. "We have taught each other. That is the value of partnership." News of their successes had begun to spread beyond New Horizon. Neighboring settlements sent emissaries to learn from them, eager to replicate the Terragrow modules and new farming techniques. Some even sent requests for Helara to consult on large-scale projects. One afternoon, a shuttle arrived carrying a group of scientists and engineers from the colony of Red Mesa, a settlement struggling with dwindling water supplies and failing crops. The visitors stepped out, looking around the settlement with wide eyes. "This is incredible," said one engineer, a tall woman with short hair. "We've heard about your modules and systems. We never imagined we'd see them in action." Helara greeted them calmly. "Welcome. Let me show you what we have developed and how it can be adapted to your settlement. Efficiency, resilience, and preparation are key." Jace watched as Helara led the visitors through the fields, explaining each system in detail. She spoke with clarity, patience, and authority, answering every question with precise knowledge. The visitors were captivated, not just by her brilliance, but by the seamless collaboration between her and Jace. "You've built more than farms," one of them said quietly to Jace. "You've built hope," Jace nodded, feeling a quiet pride. He remembered the day he had been forced into this marriage, thinking it would be a burden. And now he realized it had been the turning point for both of them, and for the colony itself. As the visitors left, Helara turned to Jace. "Our work here is complete, at least for now," she said. "They will take the knowledge with them and adapt it, but New Horizon will continue to thrive because the systems are in place and the people are ready to act." Jace nodded. "We've done more than survive. We've built something lasting." The next weeks were filled with celebrations and recognition. The colonists, once skeptical of Helara and Jace's forced union, now openly admired them. Councillor Reth addressed the settlement during a community gathering. "Helara Voss and Jace Corwin have proven that intelligence, skill, and cooperation can overcome any obstacle," she said. "They have saved the colony, improved our lives, and shown us what humans are truly capable of even on a distant world." Applause filled the dome. Helara remained modest, accepting the praise quietly. Jace stood beside her, proud not just of the accomplishments, but of the partnership they had forged. One evening, after the celebrations, Jace and Helara stood on the outer observation deck, looking at the Martian horizon. The red plains stretched endlessly, dotted with domes, farms, and modules humming with life. "Do you ever think about what could have happened if the council hadn't forced this marriage?" Jace asked. Helara considered for a moment. "Perhaps we would have found other ways to survive, but we would not have achieved this together. Partnerships create possibilities. Sometimes the most unexpected circumstances lead to the greatest outcomes." Jace smiled. "I never would have imagined that the so-called old maid would change my life and the lives of everyone here." Helara laughed softly. "And yet it happened. Labels mean nothing. Knowledge, determination, and willingness to act, that is what matters." And humans are capable of extraordinary things when we embrace those qualities. The settlement continued to grow. The second-generation TerraGrow modules were deployed across the domes, ensuring food security and efficiency. Colonists learned to maintain and improve the systems themselves, reducing dependence on a few individuals and empowering the entire community. Children, inspired by Helara and Jace, began learning farming, engineering, and problem-solving skills at an early age. The settlement was becoming not just a survival outpost, but a hub of human ingenuity, creativity, and resilience. One day, a group of young colonists approached Jace. "Sir, how did you and Helara do it? How did you save the colony and make it thrive?" Jace smiled and gestured to Helara. "It wasn't me alone. It was her vision, her knowledge, and our teamwork. But anyone can do it if they work together, plan carefully, and never stop learning." Helara knelt to speak to them. "The universe is challenging. Mars is harsh. But humans are resourceful. We can achieve more than we imagine if we use our minds, help each other, and stay determined." The children nodded, inspired. Jace watched them run off, thinking that this was the true legacy of their work, not just the crops or modules, but the hope, knowledge, and confidence they were instilling in the next generation. Weeks later, the colony faced a minor supply delay from Earth. Normally, such a situation would have caused panic and rationing. But the new systems Helara and Jace had implemented kept everyone fed, hydrated, and safe. The settlers moved confidently, knowing their survival no longer depended solely on external deliveries. They were capable, resilient, and prepared. Jace and Helara stood together, observing the bustling settlement. "We've done more than improve systems," Jace said. "We've changed the way people think about themselves and about what humans can do," Helara nodded. "That is the true achievement. Survival is important, yes, but inspiring humans to believe in their own abilities, that is the greatest contribution of all." The council formally acknowledged their accomplishments, documenting the techniques, modules, and strategies as models for future Martian settlements. Helara and Jace were invited to consult on other colonies, sharing their knowledge and methods to expand human capability across the planet. Yet, despite the recognition, Helara remained focused on the work at hand. She and Jace continued to innovate, refine, and teach, ensuring that New Horizon would remain a beacon of hope, knowledge, and resilience. One evening, as the Martian sun set behind the distant mountains, Jace turned to Helara. "You know," he said quietly, "I never expected this marriage to mean so much. I thought it was a punishment, but now I see it was a gift. For me, for the colony, and maybe even for humanity." Helara smiled, her calm eyes reflecting the fading light. "Sometimes the greatest opportunities come from circumstances we do not choose. What matters is what we do with them." Jace took her hand, feeling the strength, determination, and quiet brilliance in her touch. "I'm grateful we faced it together. And I know there's no challenge we can't overcome from here on." Helara nodded. "Yes, and that is the true legacy we leave: human resilience, ingenuity, and the courage to act, even in the most challenging circumstances." Under the quiet Martian sky, the settlement of New Horizon thrived. The crops grew, the animals flourished, and the colonists worked together with confidence and skill. Helara and Jace's partnership had transformed the community, inspired the next generation, and proven that humans, together, were capable of remarkable achievements. And somewhere, under the glowing domes and endless red plains, the story of the forced marriage that became a beacon of hope and innovation was told over and over, reminding every human on Mars that resilience, knowledge, and cooperation could shape a future brighter than anyone had imagined. The forced union had become legend, and the legacy of Helara Voss and Jace Corwin endured, showing that even the harshest world could be transformed by human ingenuity, partnership, and the unyielding spirit of survival.